And whenever I walk into a space, whenever I walk into any space, I'm always looking around. I'm studying everything, the architecture, the symbolism. I'm taking everything in, processing everything. And I'm looking around and found on the ceilings of 2 tombs in this area, I found that symbol. You all recognize this? Do you recognize what you are seeing? Adinkra symbols in the Nile Valley in Kemet 2,300 years before they were used on the west coast of Africa. All right? So process this. Process this. Now, I want you all to stay with me. I'm stretching a little bit. You know, I'm spending a lot of time researching this, talking to people, getting data, getting information, and this is where it's taking me. I talked about this migration from the south to the north. I talked about a migration from the east to the west. So there's this migration of people, culture, knowledge from the Nile to the Niger. So if these ancestors had the presence of mind to know that Kemet was going to fall, and they knew that the knowledge that they had in their possession was too important, too significant to allow to fall into the hands of the coming invaders. So they had to parcel this information and send it out. There were 6 different migrations. There's a book you all should read called Paths from the Nile, written by a colleague of Sheikh Diop, a brother by the name of Abubakar Lam. And he documents 6 migrations out of the Nile River Valley into the Niger River Valley. And that these migrations jump-started traditions among the Akan, among the Yoruba, among the Wolof. And the last migration was the migration that came into Mali and influenced the Dogon. So we can now begin to trace culturally Nile Valley knowledge in West Africa. And in conversations I've had with brothers and sisters in West Africa, I'm always digging, I'm always asking questions, asking them, what have your ancestors said about their origins? And I'm finding in Senegal, I'm finding in Nigeria, I'm finding in Ghana, I'm finding in Cameroon, I'm finding in Mali that their ancestral record says that they came from the Nile River Valley. So we are the same people. We just migrated from one part of the continent to another part of the continent before we were stolen away from West Africa and brought over here. So process this with me. I want you all to stay with me, and I want you all to process this. These ancestors had enough presence of mind to know that Kemet was going to fall. And they sent this knowledge west for safekeeping. Then they had to have known that West Africa was going to fall. And that those West Africans were going to be taken further west into the Americas, North America, South America, and all the islands in the Caribbean, but they would not be allowed to bring their knowledge, their culture, their language, their traditions with them. They were not able to bring it with them physically, but it is encoded in our DNA. That's real.
The man who has done the most to, shall we say, illuminate this discussion of the pathways from the Nile as it pertains to the genesis, the cultures and civilizations of the Western Sudan and West Africa as a whole is a man named Abubakar Lam. He was a disciple and pupil of the late Sheikh Diop, and he wrote a book called Le Chemin du Nil, the relations between Egypt and ancient Black Africa. And because of his seminal work in that regard, we have actually entitled this seminar Pathways from the Nile, which is a English translation of his title, Le Chemin du Nil. And to start off with, we can bring attention to the 6 migrations of Yoro Jau. And we look at this in 2 different sections. And we can say that through the work of Abubakar Lam, Western Sudanic oral traditions of the migrations from the Nile Valley compiled by Yoro Zhao, who was born in 1847 and died in 1919 in the late 19th century, were finally brought to light. And he was able to determine, Yoro Zhao, that from the 7th century BC to the 6th century AD, there were 6 migrations from the Nile Valley westward across the Sahara. Thus, oral traditions confirm the Nile Valley origins of the peoples and the cultures of the Western Sudan. The 7th century BC would have been about 650 to 660 BC, all the way to about 540 or 550 AD. So that was a period of 11, almost 1,200 years where these migrations took place. Each of the migrations described by Yoro Zhao was precipitated either by an invasion of the Nile Valley from outside Africa or the oppressions of the invaders' regime against the indigenous customs, cultures, and peoples. The first migration might have been a result of the Assyrian invasion of Kemet and the defeat of the Kushite kings of the 25th dynasty around 660 to 656 BC. The Songhai are a people in now what is now Eastern Mali, and at one time were the creators of the largest empire ever seen in West Africa. The Songhai were said to be originally Kushite immigrants. They may represent a branch of the Kushites from Kemet that chose to move west after 660 BC, that is to say, after the Assyrian invasions. The traditions of Ouagadougou and the capital of the Empire of Ghana. The traditions of the Soninke. Now, the Soninke were and still are, a ethnic group in West Africa, and they were the founders of the Empire of Ghana, 250 to 1070 AD. Now, Ghana was actually a name of their king, but later Arab writers and historians gave the name of their king, Ghana, to the entire country of Ghana. And then later on, and Kwame Nkrumah took the name Ghana for the country we know today as Ghana, although the Empire of Ghana was much farther to the east than the country of Ghana is today. Anyway, the Soninke, who were the founders of the Empire of Ghana, assert that their remote founding ancestor was born in the region of Songhai, or Aswan in Upper Egypt. He brought with him 2 zoomorphic, that is animal-headed, deities or divinities, the serpent and the vulture. The ancient Egyptian symbols of royal dominion over Upper and Lower Egypt. That is to say, the same symbols, the same zoomorphic symbols, the serpent and the vulture, are seen in the royal iconography of ancient Egypt. That is to say, symbols of royal dominion of both over Upper and Lower Egypt. The water-dwelling serpent, Beida, became the national deity of Ouagadougou, which is, as I say, the ancient name of the Empire of Ghana. Moreover, these traditions speak of a jackal that guided the early migrations, and therefore answers to the Egyptian opener of the way, the divine jackal, Wepwat, or Anubis. In fact, the name Wepwat, another name for Anubis, or the divine jackal, means literally opener of the way.
Senegalese anthropologist, historian, linguist, and physicist Sheikh Anta Diop states, quote, Egyptian, or Kemetic, antiquity is to African culture what Greco-Roman antiquity is to Western culture. The building up of a corpus of African humanities should be based on this fact, end quote. According to linguist Theophilo Benga, there is a, quote, close relationship between ancient Egyptian, or Kemetic, and modern Negro-African languages, end quote. For example, according to Diop, quote, Wolof, a Senegalese language spoken in the extreme west of Africa on the Atlantic Ocean, is perhaps as close to ancient Egyptian as Coptic. An exhaustive study of this question has recently been carried out, and kinship between ancient Egyptian and the languages of Africa is not hypothetical, but a demonstrable fact which is impossible for modern scholarship to thrust aside, end quote.
to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, darling, kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true.